Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Steve Bullock. I'm president of the Board of Trustees here at the City Club of Cleveland, and it's my honor to welcome you all here today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the support that you give the work of the City Club. Again, I want to remind our members and our listeners and viewers of the fact that our commitment really is to keep you informed and intellectually engaged to the degree that you want to be intellectually engaged in the critical issues of our time. We pay attention to make certain that we never get stuck in a rut, and we try to give a variety, give you variety, and ultimately over time we get to cover all of the most critical issues that face us. With that, I want to very briefly now introduce our speaker for today and today's subject. Our speaker is Dr. Azmi Bishara. He is a Palestinian member of the Israeli Knesset and head of the National Democratic Assembly Party. Dr. Bishara is a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship, and he has been in the Knesset, been a Knesset member since 1996. And just so that we are all on the same page, the Knesset is the Israeli Parliament or Congress. Dr. Bishara is a member of that governing body representing the Palestinian Israeli citizens or Arab community. Dr. Bishara has been charged in connection with political speeches that he made at a public gathering in which he supported the right to resist the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories, and also for supporting the travel of elderly Palestinian citizens of Israel to visit relatives in Syria. The Knesset actually has lifted the immunity for this member. He'll talk with you more about some of this probably, but these are relationships that are not uncomplicated, and probably today's presentation hopefully will give us some different insight as to what the relationships are. Dr. Bishara will speak to us today then and share his views on the occupation issue. So would you please join with me and welcome Dr. Azmi Bishara.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the stage and allowing me of being a part of this democratic tradition in the City Club. I spoke twice in similar places, and it was a great experience in the Western Coast in Los Angeles, and I think it's called there the Town Hall or something, but it's not the same organization. Anyway, it's a great opportunity, and I'm not going to be speaking about the issues that were mentioned in the introduction. I mean the indictment issue, because it's issues that are discussed in court. One of the charges, of course, is already dropped. We are discussing the other charges. I hope at the end of this month it will be dropped. I want to share with you more general questions concerning what is usually called the conflict in this country. And I will leave the rest of the issues that, some of the issues that were mentioned here also to questions if you like. Of course it seems complicated, as it was said. It is not uncomplicated, which means it is complicated. Well, it's a nicer way of saying complicated. Let me tell you, it seems complicated. It looks complicated, and our terminology contributes to these complications, like the word conflict. Usually in colonial issues we never use the word conflict. When we speak about countries under occupation or national liberation organizations, whether in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, or in South America, the concept that was used was not conflict. Conflict when we mean two symmetrical sides, two states, even two faiths, two religions, etc. And I do not believe that the conflict in the Middle East is an interreligious conflict. And I don't think that it's an interstate conflict. I don't even think that it is a conflict between nationalities, a national conflict. Although I'm a secular man who believes that there is a place for nationalities. I don't think that there is genuinely a conflict between Islam and Judaism. And if there is, I never heard about it, not even theologically. I heard about theological conflict between Christianity and Judaism, even as a philosopher. But about a theological conflict between Islam and Judaism, I never heard, really. And I'm somebody who read even the Rambam, who wrote in Arabic. I don't think that there is a conflict between religions in general. If we look at religions really, there are sometimes investment of religions in secular conflicts, of interest conflicts, national, etc. But I don't think there is a conflict between religions. So if we just neutralize this side and we say we want to think about the Middle East not in these terms, not in terms of conflicts between Islam and Christianity that makes the picture look so absolute, so unacceptable for compromises, and we look at it as a colonial question, as an occupation question, I think things look simpler. Of course, not in the way people present themselves. Of course, Zionism would like to present itself as a national liberation movement itself. The Palestinians would like to present themselves as a revolutionary movement. They are not anymore. People represent themselves differently, according to circumstances, according to historical conditions, etc. But in general, I think one characteristic of this situation in the Middle East has always been there. It's the question of occupation, the fact that a land was occupied with its people and subdued to a military occupation since 1967. Now, this should be accepted even by people who do not agree that 1948 was an occupation. Even for people who recognize Israel in the borders of the 4th of June 1948 and accept Israel either as a fact or as a right, either de facto or de jure, accept Israel between 1948 and 67, they acknowledge the fact. Even right-wing people, even Mr. Sharon himself, they acknowledge the fact that Israel occupies the West Bank and Gaza. Now, of course, many Palestinians would say 1948 itself was an occupation, a settler occupation, a settler colonialism, a European settler colonialism even, using religious rights, using religious argumentation, using religious justification. But at the end, for the Palestinians, it was an occupation. You can't call it differently. For the Israelis, it can be different things. But for the Palestinians, it was an occupation. For the Palestinian peasant whose land was taken, it was an occupation. This is called usually narrative. The Palestinian narrative is, this is an occupation. Now, if you abstract from this, and if you say, well, okay, this is history. Let's not talk about history. History is important for universities. What is now there? The country accepted by the majority of the world as a sovereign country in the borders of 1967 occupies the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza. Many would ask me, oh yes, why don't you call them occupied under Jordan and Egypt? Because they are not occupied under Jordan and Egypt. They were administered by Jordan and Egypt and not given a state because Jordan and Egypt and the Palestinians until 1967 did not recognize the right of Israel to exist. They thought about the liberation of Palestine, the whole of Palestine. Since the 70s, there is a willingness of the Arabs and the Palestinians to accept Israel in the borders of the 4th of June 1967. And to accept a historical compromise of Israel in which a Palestinian state emerges in the West Bank and Gaza in the borders of 1967.